Right?
Stream time.
It is live stream Thursday here at 11:30 a.m. on the Eastern Coast.
It is already Thursday.
It is already Thursday.
Whew, where'd the week go?
Time keeps on slipping into the future.
Into the future. Space Jam.
Right?
Space Jam.
Is that Space Jam?
Yeah, well, it's in Space Jam.
It's in Space Jam.
It's one of my kids' favorite movies.
Well, I don't know it as Space Jam.
That's not the name of the song.
No. I don't even know who sings that song. I know the chorus pretty much.
Seal? No.
No. It's older.
It is older.
Yes.
Steve Miller Band did a version of it.
Maybe
it was Steve Miller
Maybe
Band.
it was Steve Miller Band. If
I don't know.
Who's saying time keeps on slipping into the future. It's not our song of the week today, but go ahead and chat that into us, and maybe you can help that up. We could try the old
Googler.
the Google machine, as they say.
I'll use the Googler after the live stream to find that out. I feel like someone redid it for Space Jam.
Right.
I feel like Steve Miller's in play on that.
I feel like that sounds right. That's what I'm going to go with right now.
See, I'm not good at guess the tune, but if you do like guess the movie quote,
right,
world champion.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out and say it.
Yeah.
Like I would win trivia on that one for sure.
Yeah, I'm good with that kind of trivia.
Yeah, not music so much. But happy Thursday.
Yeah, happy
We're excited to be here at the live stream with you. And my name is Erin Watson. I'm the Director of Client Experience here at Game On. And I'm joined by
Chris Friday, who is the Director of Programs here at Game On. And, we started talking about time, like where how is it already Thursday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where did the time go?
Yeah.
The theme of the blog for the last couple weeks, if you've had a chance to read that, has been about, Game On 25th anniversary, right?
The Big 2-5.
The Big 2-5. And I think about where did that time go?
Yeah. And now how long have you been with Game On? Let's tell everybody that.
I've been with Game On since 2009.
Okay, so
2009, I came into Game On back when they were at IMG Academy.
Okay.
And now we're in 2022. So that's a lot of years.
That's a lot of years.
It's a lot of years.
That's awesome.
But last week, Blair and I talked about like where we were 25 years ago. In 1997, 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was like in my first like big boy like job, from college into working as like a sales manager at GTE Wireless. I share it's not even a company anymore, But I would be interested to hear, like, Erin, in 1997.
Yes.
Where were you, and what was happening in your world?
Okay.
When Steve was starting Game On.
All right. Well, in 1997, I was 10 years old. Wow. So I showed my age, and you do the math. So I was 10 years old. We were living in Wahua, Hawaii. Wahua, Hawaii. Where the state fish is the humu humu nuku nuku wapua.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to learn that?
I had a whole year of like Hawaiian culture class in fourth grade. So that was part of it.
The only thing I know in Hawaiian culture, not the only thing, but like, the thing that stuck with me is like King Kamehameha.
King Kamehameha is a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big deal.
And I just enjoyed saying that but I had nothing like koko puko pu.
The humu humu.
The humu humu.
Nuku nuku.
Nuku nuku.
Apua. It's a triggerfish.
I'll leave that to her.
Yeah. So we were living in Hawaii. I was in fifth grade. And we were stationed at Schofield Barracks. My dad is a retired Army colonel. At the time, he was a lieutenant colonel, battalion commander there in Schofield Barracks. And it was the most beautiful duty station you could possibly ask for. And it was a gift in many ways. We had moved from Fort Polk, Louisiana, which is as small as it sounds, to Waihoa, Hawaii. And it was a huge win. So
I'm sure people were like, how do you sign up for like, as far as like the duty stations go, like how do you get on that Hawaii tip?
Yeah,
I'm sure that's in all the brochures, like, join the military, see the world, live in Hawaii.
Yeah, so with the military, you kind of put your list in, but then the Army tells you where home's going to be.
Right.
So that's military life. Yeah. And that's cool.
Yeah. So 10 years old, 25 years ago, living in Hawaii with the triggerfish.
With the triggerfish. I was a competitive swimmer for a long time, so that's where my love of swimming started, was at Schofield Barracks. I had a really awesome coach.
Yeah.
And so I'll use that as a segue to talk about what Steve wrote about and how can we be good?
Right.
Be good leaders, be good presenters, be
Mhm.
good people. And I think we have to think back to all the people who led us to where we are
Yeah.
and who helped us become and be good. So, 10 years old, my first swim coach, Coach Mike at the Schofield Barracks Swim Club. I think
Yeah.
it was the Schofield Sharks, if I remember correctly. And he was a wonderful coach.
Why not the Schofield?
Doesn't quite roll off the tongue.
Right. Thanks for a long T-shirt.
Yes, truly. Can't put it all on a swim cap.
Right.
So Coach Mike he was a wonderful coach, and it was one of those things that, like, looking back now as an adult, I can appreciate how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
He pushed me really hard. He had a lot of faith in me when I didn't have faith in myself. And honestly, he wasn't always the nicest coach.
Okay.
And you didn't always know if he cared, really, because he didn't come across very nice. But I will never forget the swim meet. I was one of the people who swam like the first event of the day and the last event of the day.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been in the competitive swim world, swim meets last all day, if not multiple days.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never forget that he was there for my first event and waited with me all day until my last event.
Wow.
And the way that people show up for you
Right.
shows you how much they care. He wasn't one to use words to tell you how much he cared, but he would show you.
Yeah.
And so I always took that as a leadership philosophy, a coaching philosophy, and it's that, like, just show up mentality.
Mhm.
And how you physically show up for people matters.
Well, I mean, I think that, as we were talking about, just some of the different things that were in Steve's blog about being good leaders, presenters, teammates, people, and, being good together. Your story kind of resonates with me from that leadership standpoint, because when I think about, like, good leaders, right? Be a good leader, thinking about, various leaders that I've encountered in my life. And we should note too, like, good does not mean, like, we're not using good in the terms of, like, he's good,
He's good.
right?
Yeah.
It's like good. It's like
Solid. Good
solid.
people.
I like that feeling that I get when I say it's good, right?
Mhm.
My first job,
Mhm.
I worked at a store that I don't know if they exist anymore, maybe online or maybe a few of them, Kmart. Did you have Kmart in Hawaii?
Yes, I believe we did. And I miss our Kmart here in Bradenton.
Right.
Shout out, because it just made my life easy. It was so close to our house. But yeah,
Well,
miss old Kmart.
I had a manager, his name was John.
Okay.
We called him, we called him by his last name. But he was awesome. And I remember, like, on my first day, I'm in high school,
Mhm.
right? First job, making $4.35 an hour, because that's minimum wage was $4.25. So I was making a dime more.
Killing it.
Living large, right?
Living large.
Yeah. But so I show up and they're like, first day, they're like, Kmart had an eatery, little restaurant,
I
cafeteria.
remember. Yeah. The popcorn you smelled.
Yeah,
like
right?
running.
Yes. And, no one had emptied the trash the entire day.
Mhm.
And so there were like 4 or 5 different trash cans that were all full and, like, overflowing.
Mhm.
Imagine that, right? And, like, your first assignment is for $4.35 an hour is to go empty all of these trash cans, right? And so you had to have, like, a manager had to go and open up the back door, right?
Mhm.
And oftentimes they would basically just stand there with their arms folded and watch you
Struggle.
right?
The struggle bus.
So my manager, John, he's in his, like, white shirt, tie, and, like, loafers with, like, weren't even like the comfort sole loafers. They were like the leather
Hard
sole,
yeah.
right? So he's like, all right, let's go. And he's, like, pushing trash cans out with me. He's, like, helping me sling it and pick stuff up off the ground. And, like,
Yeah.
he's out there doing it with me. And it's like, well, this is not what I expected.
Yeah.
And so it was just a good kind of, like, right at the beginning to set that tone as, like, as a leader, like, I love those leaders who are willing to, like, just like you said, like, show up for you. And, like,
Yeah.
boy, he showed up in that moment of just, like, I got you, and I might have, like, a title and all this tenure, but, like, I'm not above, like, helping you out if you need help. If I
Yeah.
see there's a need there, I'm willing to do that for you.
Well, and the lead by example moment that comes from that.
Yes.
I mean, again, you can do so much more with your actions than you can with your words.
Mm-hmm.
Very often.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny. So it's funny you have a take out the trash story.
Yeah.
And this is not to, like, toot toot for Steve,
Right.
but I'll never forget when I was hired, I was
Mhm.
asked to come into a company retreat situation, and I wasn't fully onboarded at that point. I was just coming to observe for the day.
Right.
First thing I saw when I came in the door, Steve was the one taking out the trash.
Mm.
He's the president and founder of
Yes,
the company.
right. 25 years ago,
taking
in
out the trash.
1997, right?
Yeah. And it was just one of those moments of like, I love an organization where nobody is above taking out the trash.
Yeah.
And using that as a metaphor, you know, we have really great moments that happen, and it's easy to like sit in those and celebrate in those, but navigating the lows, navigating the hard moments.
Yeah.
And when you have someone who can lead by example, it makes the lows so much easier.
So true.
That's how I feel, at least.
So true. I'd love to hear what your stories are. If whether you want to chat in at us, or you know, even just share it with us on different social channels that we have. You know, like some of your like good leader stories. Let's shift into another one.
Okay.
Good. How about good like presenters? We do some presentation here.
A little here and there.
At Game On, right?
Yeah.
And thinking about like what makes good presenters, right? Like think about those conferences that you might have been to, and you're like, wow, I'm really getting a lot out of this. I'm getting the value. Or versus even sometimes reflect on those moments where you're like, man, I feel like I'm just like counting ceiling tiles here.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think I worked in the education space for a long time before I joined the Game On team. So I spent 9 years doing professional development and working with teachers, and my degree is in education. So my senior year of college, I had to do my internship student teaching experience. My supervising teacher was incredible. She was wonderful. And I want to shout her out too. The teacher next door.
Yes.
You could hear everything happening in his classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the American history teacher.
Okay.
And he would reenact battles in his classroom.
Wow.
He would climb on the desks. He would do all kinds of things to make it as experiential learning experience as humanly possible. And if you've ever worked with middle school students, if you've ever been around middle school students, getting them motivated to understand how history impacts them, or to understand how government impacts them, or just, you know, social sciences in general can be a little bit trickier.
Yeah, right.
But if you're a great storyteller, if you turn history into a story, you can see me getting excited.
Yeah.
Like, I think about amazing history teachers I've had, history professors I've had who just brought it to life. Yeah. And he was one of those teachers. And the parents' feedback was like, "Oh, thank you so much for drafting him into the battle so that he could learn about the Civil War." And like hearing that feedback from parents was so funny because it meant their kids brought it home and were like excited to tell their parents about it. Yeah. So I want to shout out to our teachers who do it every day. You know what I mean? Yeah. We go in and give presentations regularly, but you know, you get people who are literally on some kind of stage every single day. Yeah. So making it fun and being an excellent storyteller. So he's someone who came to mind for like great presenters. Right.
As I think about like great presenters, I think about, you know, my faith is a big part of my life. And I think about like pastors or like priests or rabbis, like, in like a church faith situation where you have someone who basically like giving a presentation every single week, and not just for like one slice or one demographic of an audience. You have like 80-year-olds in there. You've got, sometimes you have like, you know, moms with newborns that are like crying and they don't want to bring them to the nursery, you know, and then you have everything in between, and you have to like, I have to like speak into like all of these people who are all going through like different things in their life. Yeah. And I have to try to think like, what is a message that I can bring to them that might like edify them in some way, or, you know, just showcase different things that are happening in people's lives. And it's like, that's got to be tough, you know.
It's a monumental undertaking, right? In so many ways.
And they all have your email address, so they can all let you know, like instantly.
So true.
You know, like what's happening. So I feel like those are the teachers. Some of those folks who are like constantly. Sometimes you look at all of those folks, you're like, how are they so good at like just telling stories, or how are they so good at, you know, like holding attention, or in whatever medium they use. And some of them like use a PowerPoint, some of them don't. Some of them just engage, like you said, with storytelling. Yeah. And so, you know, what do you think makes like some good presenters, or how do people like, because I know, up there on the list of like fear is public speaking, right? Some people would rather be the one in the casket than the one giving the eulogy.
Totally.
So what are some things as you think about like presentation tips, those kinds of things?
So for me, at least, preparation.
Right.
I mean, I think that's the number one thing to me is how you've prepared. So I'm a studier. I'm studious by nature, and I will look over my notes and look over my notes and look over my notes. What I've had to learn over the years, though, is that I can overstudy. And I can hit that point of like, Erin, you're overthinking this now.
Right.
And I'll actually have that moment where I study so much that I hit a wall of like, I don't remember anything.
Yeah.
I can't, my mind has gone completely blank. So for me, it's been figuring out a preparation style that works for me. And no two preparation styles are the same.
Right.
I've met people who are just so good at winging it.
Right.
And walking in, they're like, I'll figure it out. And I love that and respect it. And I have aspects of that, but at the same time, I like structured winging it, if you will.
Yes.
Where as long as I can get through the first 5 minutes of my presentation, I'm fine from there.
Yeah.
And it was something that jumped into mind when you were talking about pastors and why, or, religious leaders. That's interesting. Anyone can walk into your space on any day.
Yeah.
So you have no idea what your audience is going to be like, how many people are going to show up. So your amount of control is incredibly limited. But what you can control is how you prepare.
Yes.
I can't think of a single pastor that I know or have met or spent time around who doesn't prepare for hours before giving a sermon.
Yeah.
So at least, I mean, I would love to hear if somebody has another preparation style, but the study and intention that goes into it makes all the difference.
Well, I think even too, like if you're talking like a presentation, oftentimes not even just in like that setting, but in like even like theater like settings is like, they're thinking about everything that the person is walking into, right? And so, oftentimes you might have like a theme series, or a play has a certain kind of like, it's a comedy. And so there's a certain vibe. And so like, you set things up on the outside before people go in, so that your presentation is kind of like, it's already meeting them at a place where you wanted them to kind of be. And so I think some of those aspects of like play into just overall like how the presentation is going to go and be received.
Absolutely. And for people who have worked with Game On before, part of our preparation is to understand the physical space.
Right.
To understand where we're walking into, how it's set up, and how that setup can set you up for success, or how it can set you up for problems. Right. So, thinking back to a presentation I've seen that just kind of stuck with me, I had the opportunity to go to the U.S. Supreme Court and, in a very intimate setting, listen to Ruth Bader Ginsburg speak, Justice Ginsburg, and she is an incredible presenter. She's an incredible speaker, and regardless of where you are on the political spectrum or beliefs, she's just a brilliant woman. Right. And shared really incredible wisdom. But the thing that stuck with me, in addition to her actual presentation, was the preparation beforehand. When we went in, there was a podium that was up high. It was probably someone for like my height or taller. I'm about 5'9". Right. And was about 4'10". She's a tiny woman. Right. And this gentleman came in beforehand and started cranking the handle on the podium, and it's going. While she was there? She was not in the room yet. She was not in the room. And this thing keeps going down and down and down and down. And it was almost like a comedic, just purely comedic moment, because we're all watching the podium. I'm like, how low will it go? Right. And the fact that her team knew exactly how to set up the room, knew exactly how to have the podium, exactly where to have the glass of water, exactly where the notes went. And all of that was in and set up for her. Remembering that your team who helps set you up can be part of your success too. Right. It's not just who is on the stage, but the people behind the stage too. Yeah. And you do theater. I do theater. So talk to me a little bit about the role of people behind the presentation. Oh, I mean, like, it's one thing to like have actors on stage with like a really great script, but if you can't see them, if the lighting is bad, totally detracts, right? Or if you can't hear them, totally detracts. Or it just the ambiance. I remember a theater I used to be associated with for a long time. They were doing this play
Around the World in 80 Days.
Yeah.
Hilarious play. And what they did was they were like, we wanted to create almost like this carnival type of atmosphere.
Mhm.
And so they had like popcorn they were giving away at the concessions, and they were trying to encourage people to bring it into the theater of like, why are we doing this? But they
got
wanted,
rogue.
right? Yeah, but they wanted that to be a part of that forethought of going on behind the scenes, because they knew it was going to impact how the audience received that particular message. And I think, for anyone that's looking to maybe even get better at presentations and those kinds of things, sometimes it's some of these folks that we're talking about, they have repetition. They get, teachers get a lot of opportunity to practice, right? Pastors and leaders, they go to school and they don't just like learn material, but they learn, they get those reps. And I'd say like seek out opportunities for like for just repetitions, and getting those moments of like, even if it's like, I'm gonna be the one that volunteers to give the intro in like a meeting, right? It's still treat that as like a presentation, right? And so you're just getting used to some of those moments so it feels more comfortable.
Absolutely. And in the spirit of preparation and repetition, before I did my first ever fully game on session, I recruited my husband, made him a little snack, sat on the couch, and did my game on session with Dan.
Yes.
And that moment of practice and preparation and doing it in front of somebody, I felt safe in front of him, but also cared deeply about not looking silly in front of my husband as well while I was doing my job, because he hadn't seen that yet.
Well, and it was
so helpful.
To tag into that, we did a project with a government agency, and I got my wife, my mother-in-law, and like some friends over, and I did it in the living room as if I was going to do it. And some of that also was just like, the content was very, like wordy, and there was lots of legalese. And so I wanted to know, like, is this resonating? Am I saying this a way where you're like a deer in headlights you don't understand? Or like, how can I convey this so that it makes an impact?
Right.
In some of those moments. So sometimes that's good, where they have no connection to the content.
Yes.
And they can give you feedback like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
And it's like, oh, I need to fix something.
And also he was able to, in the same vein, like look at it and go, I have no context for this, but I really enjoyed that.
Yes.
And that was nice feedback to hear. And he was actually able to give some really good, like, maybe you should say it this way, because, in this case, it was for a women's event. He's like, but if you have men in the audience, you might want to think about this.
Yeah.
So getting a trusted audience. And I think where the segue I want to use this for is how we can be good together.
Yes.
That we are so much better as a cooperative element. People need human connection.
Yes.
We need each other. So how can we learn to be good together? How can we learn about the power of collaboration and the power of cooperation to make us better as individuals as well?
Well, when you say that, I think about, I don't know if there's any Office TV show fans out there, but I listen to like Office podcasts and, some of those kinds of things. And it's interesting, when they made that show, Ricky Gervais has an interview where he talks about, in an office, sometimes, you're put together. You don't necessarily often choose like who all your coworkers are.
Right.
You're put together and you're thinking like, how do these people work together and towards like a common goal? And something Greg Daniels, who was the showrunner and really like created the American version of The Office, he talked about like when he hired a writing staff, he hired people that he thought had like different writing superpowers. Like some people were like good at writing absurd stuff. Some people were very like heart-centered. Some people were good at writing some like cringe moments, And so he wanted this collection of people that weren't just like him, but like had different comic sensibilities, different writing styles, because he wanted, a very well-rounded show.
Right.
And I think sometimes it's very easy to work on a team, to have, sometimes there's tension and friction and like, that's not how I would do it, right?
Yeah.
Or that's not like me. And realizing that like they might have a different superpower, right? And that superpower might be a compliment or fill one of my superhero gaps.
Absolutely. And I mean, and to use the superhero analogy, if you look at Marvel or Justice League or whatever your flavor is in terms of a superhero team, they don't all have the same superpower.
Right.
How boring would it be to watch, 10 Hulks
Yeah.
working together. There's just a lot
Everything
of
would
smashing.
be rubble, right?
All the smashing, right?
Yeah.
But you need the power of intellect. You need the power of science. You need the force.
The fast person. Yeah. Right.
So superhero teams, and everyone kind of finds. I have 3 boys.
Right.
My kids have attached to very different superheroes in
Yeah.
terms of what they like. So my middle son is Captain America through and through,
Mm-hmm.
and he just loves it. My oldest is more the Iron Man kind of vibe. So we attach to those different superpowers, but they all have a role,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no such thing as a small part,
Right.
and every part matters.
I think when I think about being good together,
Mhm.
I think sometimes that's where we get off, is when we try to force everyone into like a specific box, or maybe we don't assume a positive intent,
Right.
and so I would just say, on your team, think about, who is on your team, like what are their superpowers,
Yeah.
and how do their superpowers like fill our gaps.
So with that in mind, how would you mitigate that conversation that you used as an example? Like, this person is doing something in a way that that's not how I would approach it.
Mhm.
So how can we either close that gap, learn to respect that gap,
Right.
or what are your thoughts on that?
I think sometimes just getting a sense of like trying to understand maybe like the point of view, or like maybe where they're coming from. They might have like a list of like several different reasons of like, the reason why I'm doing this like this is because, and I might be completely unaware
Mm-hmm.
of that, but it's easy sometimes to be like, that's not how I would do it, so therefore that's
Totally.
wrong. And then sometimes you're like, oh, like, yeah, I get that. It's kind of like, like the idea of this is like some philosophical idea of just like when you were walking through the woods and you see a fence,
Mm-hmm.
do you just immediately like tear down the fence because you don't see why it's there?
Right.
Or do you seek to understand like, why was this fence here in the first place? And then let's decide if it needs to come down or not.
Okay. Well, I think, 2 weeks ago, Steve and Jason did a live stream on Help Me Understand.
Yes.
So
It's a great question.
those are 3 very powerful words. Just help me understand
Yes.
why we're doing it that way. Inside help me understand is humility
Yeah.
of I want to learn.
Yeah.
And so in terms of being better together, how are we pushing each other to those moments of humility? How are we pushing each other to those moments of learning while still feeling empowered to stand up for our position?
Yeah.
I think there's a careful balance that can happen. And, the sum is so much better than the parts too.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and with that, sometimes as a leader, as you engage with that, somebody's got to make the decision, right?
right.
And so sometimes I had an acting teacher who told a story of she studied with Stella Adler. And I don't know if anybody knows Stella Adler, but she was like a very, she's very renowned and, had a certain way of doing things. And like she was giving one direction, she thought it should be one way. And the actress was giving, who was my teacher, was like, I think it should be like this. And she listed all those reasons. And Stella Adler ended up saying like, you're right and I'm right. But however, I'm going to win. And it was just like, I'm going to be the director.
Okay.
And everything that you say is completely valid. And sometimes it's having enough like courage to be like, that makes sense, this makes sense, but this is the way that we're going to go. And then being 100% on board with like, yes, I will go that direction. And you can trust in that if you feel like I'm working with a good leader, who's a good person, who I feel like we're good together, and maybe that comes from somebody else. But sometimes there are those moments where you get all the reasons why you're going to go in a certain direction, and that's okay too.
And admittedly, in that moment of like self-awareness, I tend to be a little headstrong on stuff.
Right.
So when I hear something and I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea. And
Right.
there are times when that has flown out of my mouth and I had to stop myself and like very much stop and go, I shouldn't have said it that way. That makes me nervous.
Right.
Or just articulating why it created that feeling in me. And I had this conversation with Blair maybe a month ago, where I was like, I don't know if that's a good idea. And then I stopped and was like, I shouldn't have said it that way. And her words back to me were just very kind. She goes, I hear that and I understand it, but can we just try this?
Yeah.
And that moment of like, can we just try this was like,
Okay.
yes, I came in too strong, and we can always try it, and it's something we can change.
No,
It doesn't work out.
yeah,
Or it
it
might
goes
work
back
out.
to that help me understand,
Totally.
like in those kinds of moments, right? Because I think oftentimes, in there's not like a script. It's not like a math formula.
Mhm.
You know, some of these things of like being a good leader or presenter together, where it's 1 + 1 is going to just equal 2, right? It's different and it's nuanced and it changes constantly, right?
By the day.
Some people might say like it's a winding road.
Every day is a winding road.
Every day can be a winding road,
But we get a little bit closer.
right?
So our song of the week. That was a good, smooth segue there, Chris.
Yeah.
Smooth. So Sheryl Crow's song, Every Day is a Winding Road.
Yeah.
So as we navigate through being good leaders and being good presenters and being good people, every day presents different challenges, presents different opportunities, presents different moments, and every day is going to ebb and flow. And it's about how we respond to that, right?
Yeah. Well, and when you think of like a winding road, you know, you can't see what's around the corner.
Right.
You can only see what's here right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think about like Disney World. Disney World and theme parks are constructed in a way where they don't go in straight lines.
Right.
Because they want you to experience this moment right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you move past it, there's a new thing that presents it. So like when you first roll up, if you've ever been to Disney World in Orlando, Florida, when you first roll up to the train station, you cannot see the Magic Kingdom.
You don't see the castle.
You see the train station,
Yeah.
right? And then the train comes by.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's all these different reveals and all of these different moments that we deal with. And in that case, hopefully we're excited. There's just a new moment of magic. And so sometimes being willing to approach, like, it's a winding road. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to enjoy what's happening right here, right now, or make the best of it right here, right now, and then take that next moment as it comes.
Yeah, and just one more lyric in the song when she said, "Jump in, let's go."
Yes.
How can we just have that let's go mentality?
Mhm.
That like, let's be good. Let's do it. Let's do this together. And sometimes it just takes jumping in. And I'm not one for jumping out of my comfort zone or pushing people out of their comfort zones. But I think we can expand them and we can grow them.
Absolutely.
And we can learn to jump in and let's go.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate all of you guys tuning in this late morning here in Bradenton, Florida, for more about 25 years of Game On.
And we always want to hear more from you. So we do a live stream every Thursday. So we want to encourage you to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and make sure you subscribe on YouTube so that we can keep in touch with you. And if you haven't signed up for the newsletter to keep getting that every week, Steve's blog, find a way to let us know. You can always find us at gameonnation.com. Our email addresses are all there, and we are always excited to talk with you, engage with you, connect with you, and help you be good.
That's it.
So
thanks a lot for joining in, guys.
Have an incredible week, and thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
Bye.